Hello there to my audience of 0 people, which, by the way, is okay. I'm keeping these videos low-key for now. I will probably make them public soon, I think, but I kind of am my only viewer. I mean, I share these videos a limited amount, but I'm definitely my main viewer. I definitely have been making these videos in Season 2 more just to prove that I can than anything else. So these videos are for myself. But hello to you, as in the person that I have to be addressing for this video to make any sense, you figmentary figure you. Maybe someday somebody will watch this video. Possibly, probably. So, hello to you in the future. You might not be listening to this for a long time, or maybe you stumbled across it really in the near future. Um, but I'll put some battle videos up on screen, some videos of me defeating some bosses in some of these games that I am discussing, and as I record here, it is the late evening of New Year's Day 2022. I didn't really celebrate New Year's very much, didn't do that much, and so I've been staying busy on the gaming and the video projects and some weird social life event happenings, changes, progress in all parts of my life all around. And so here I am on New Year's Day, keeping myself busy and content I've been editing an upcoming video all day. I think it's progressing pretty well. All my videos are flawed, and I accept that. I'm never going to make a perfect video, not anytime in the near future, because I am very much a learner, very much learning how to do this and all this how this all happens and works. I am not a master at writing, voicing, editing. I'm just trying to get better. That's the whole point. That is the whole point. So I've been editing a video today, and I get frustrated during the creative process. First of all, because it's pretty slow to be creative. Never just, you can't make something out of nothing immediately, no matter how good you are. And secondarily, because while creating something, I assume this happens to everybody, I notice flaws in my project, and I'm like, I don't want to go on. I should give up. I noticed something, a mistake I made, something's wrong, and I'm like, how am I going to fix this? I should just give up right now and do something different instead. I should just go, play Minecraft. But today, I'm going to be doing, another episode of the Not Really a Kind of Sorta podcast, whatchamacallit, whatever thing, where I discuss the Soulsborne series of video games by video game studio From Software, generally headed by Hidetaka Miyazaki. I thought about making a video, like a scripted review video for this purpose, but I don't think it would work out. I don't think I could make one video reviewing every Soulsborne game. Like, how many of them are there? I think there are 6, that's right. I couldn't make one video reviewing 6 different games, each of which I've spent at least 100 hours on, most of them. So There's a few problems with that, because, like, first of all, it's been a long time since I've played some of them, and I played them a lot, so they're still, like, clear in my mind, but, you know, I'm not in the headspace to be reviewing them, because at this point, I was playing them, like, at different parts in my life, and they're not super relevant and direct to me anymore. They're not what's going on for me right now. They're like, when I was younger, I played Dark Souls and Bloodborne. It was quite a while ago at this point, because I played, I think it was 2020 that I played Nope, 2019 that I played Bloodborne. Yeah, gee. It's 2022 now, huh? 2020 was the year of the pandemic, and, 2022 is, Man, crazy how time works, huh? It's already 2022. Well, it's okay. I had a really busy and productive 2021. So, I played Bloodborne for the first time in 2019, and, Let's go in order of the order in which I played these Soulsborne games, all 6 of them, and I'm not going to give a full review, but I wanted to make some sort of thing that is out there. Since I've been making several Soulsborne related videos, and I'm probably not going to stop since it's one of my favorite series, I might still keep making videos about it. I wanted to put something out there that overviews my opinions on each Soulsborne game, just so that it's out there, and I've said it, but I can't do like a full-form review because that would be way more work than it's worth, and I'm not really like interested in reviewing them anymore. The time has passed, you know. So, I mean, it would be weird to write a review for a game that I beat almost 3 years ago now, like Bloodborne. 2.5 years ago. Okay, so, yes, Bloodborne was the first one that I played in 2019, and it was a bit of a different game for me. I didn't know a ton about it. I knew that it was related to Dark Souls, and I was playing a lot of Overwatch at the time. I really wanted something different, like, but Overwatch and other games, at the time, like Super Meat Boy, really had me attracted to difficulty. Like, I wanted the hardest stuff I could find. Like, I wanted to get to top 500 in Overwatch, and I did. And I wanted another super duper hard game after I completed Super Meat Boy, because I was disappointed that I had no more of that. And I was attracted to Bloodborne. I picked it instead of Dark Souls because Dark Souls is like a whole series, and I wasn't sure I wanted to get into a whole series, so I picked something that was only tangentially related, and boy was I that naive. Boy was that a naive choice, because I ended up getting heavily into this mega franchise anyway. Bloodborne is a... You know, I'll try to keep it quick because I gotta go through multiple of these games, but it's a Lovecraftian-themed, Victorian era-inspired horror action RPG game, heavily based on Dark Souls. It's sort of a spin-off of Dark Souls, like same engine, some of the same controls and concepts, but a very different style to it. Whereas in Dark Souls, like shields are important. You get a lot of shields in your left hand, or like bows or something. In Bloodborne, what you have in your hand is a rifle, a gun that you... Ironically, it's really bad at shooting enemies from a distance. It's mainly used for stunning them, for staggering them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What do I talk about with Bloodborne? Yeah, it's very trippy. It's extremely difficult. It's one of the more difficult ones. I would say it's the second most difficult next to Sekiro, and it's more difficult than any of the Dark Souls games. But where Bloodborne differs from Dark Souls in difficulty is that a lot of Dark Souls' difficulty stems from its exploration, like a lot of traveling around the world and falling into traps, being ambushed by enemies, and you got to traverse long distances between checkpoints. That's where a lot of Dark Souls' difficulty comes from, whereas in Bloodborne, that's not so much the focus. Bloodborne, compared to Dark Souls, is way more linear. Not to say that it's entirely linear, it has a lot of branching paths, but generally it's less non-linear than Dark Souls, and there's kind of a set order of bosses and a path that you're intended to take, with some side paths along the way and a bunch of secret and optional bosses, some of which are very extraordinarily hard to find, like Ligarius. So, in Bloodborne, the difficulty more is in the bosses themselves. Many bosses in Bloodborne, about as much as in Dark Souls 1 and 3. And in Bloodborne, the bosses, a lot of them are hyper difficult. You know, you have no shield in this game, so you can't block damage so much. It's footing is way more important, and that's why Bloodborne's combat is more technical than Dark Souls. Footing is so important. A lot of the mechanics and techniques, like the specifics of the gun, are extremely important. The weapons there aren't that many weapons, but they're highly customizable. You can really change how you use weapons a lot, different styles and different stat boosters that you can find. And, armor in Bloodborne is insignificant. It's strange. There's so much armor in Bloodborne, but so little of it is good. I mean, it provides some small benefits, but none of the armor changes your stats very much. It's honestly bizarre how little the armor matters, and yet there's so much of it. I would think, like, they did that for cosmetic purposes so that you can choose how you want to dress, but then why have the armor affect your stats at all? You could just have the stats provide no buffs and just make it a purely cosmetic thing. But it was weird. You get like armor that has +5 or +2, +0. Just useless armor, but there's so much of it. It's a very strange design choice, I thought. Bloodborne is a fantastic game. I remember it for its hyper-difficult bosses that gave me so many fun memories, and its soundtrack is pretty decent, pretty stellar, pretty good. Lots of secrets that are crazy to find. A really trippy story that I didn't understand at all. Really weird story. I didn't make much attempt to analyze it because it's like one of those stories where it gets heavy into like theorizing and interpretation, just ripe for the game theorists, and I'm really not into games that tell that kind of story, like Five Nights at Freddy's. I'd prefer a game that just says what its story is more direct about it, rather than trying to get me to like piece together some puzzles and pull out the whatever, take notes. Not into that. So I didn't pay much attention to Bloodborne's story, but I know it's deep in lore, and it gets really weird. Finally, its atmosphere is very potent. It's one of those rare special games that just feels very easily immersive and very emotionally captivating. It has this really soothing tone. I mean, yeah, you're in a world of terror and distress, and it's pretty melancholy at points, but it just gets you in this specific emotional state. Like, you know that there's danger out there, but at least in the hunter's dream or somewhere you feel safe, you know that everything's okay and that you can find success and that you can get out there and win and defeat the huge bosses and succeed and overcome and triumph. And that's why these Soulsborne games are so gripping. Dark Souls was the next one that I played immediately. Dark Souls Remastered, to be specific. Oh, and one more thing about Bloodborne. Just its DLC, the Old Hunters, which I bought, is by far the best part of the whole game. The best bosses are there, the best levels are there, and the best weapons. Everybody would tell you, yeah, the Old Hunters is the best part of Bloodborne. And I love it so much. Some of those bosses are near and dear to my heart. The only problem is that, like, I would learn this is a recurring pattern with From Software, but the DLC of the Old Hunters was, like, surprisingly anticlimactic. It's a recurring thing that From Software does. The best parts of their game are in the DLC, their best work is always in the DLC, and yet it's always anticlimactic. It leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions and, like, unfinished plot arcs. For example, your reward for beating the final boss of Bloodborne's DLC is a joke weapon. It's a weapon that's entirely useless. That's all you get for defeating the final boss. Pretty strange. Dark Souls Remastered. Oh, yeah, and just one more thing about Bloodborne. I rate it 9 out of 10. Okay, two more things about Bloodborne. I rate it 9 out of 10. It would be 10 out of 10. The only thing holding it back is the freaking Chalice Dungeon feature, which I somehow have yet to get to. The Chalice Dungeons, they're these randomly generated dungeons in Bloodborne that have a lot of side content. They have a lot of bosses in them. I feel like they were probably rejected boss designs that From Software designed and programmed, but couldn't in any way fit into the main story. So there are two main kinds of Chalice Dungeon. There are regular ones and root Chalice Dungeons, and the root ones are randomly generated. Every time you go in, it has a seed, and that seed will give you a different dungeon every time you use it. However, a regular Chalice Dungeon that's not a root one was procedurally generated, but is finalized for every player. So every player has the same Chalice Dungeons. However, they were procedurally generated by a computer, and not a ton of human influence went into them. So as a result, Chalice Dungeons suck. They just feel like, obviously there was no human intelligence behind them, so they're really random. A lot of random twists and turns and dead ends and weird things that you find out of nowhere. Like, there's a weapon in Bloodborne that is only obtainable in one obscure Chalice Dungeon, which otherwise most people wouldn't go to because it's not important. It's just this one chest in this one Chalice Dungeon has a super rare weapon, and that's the only way to get that weapon in the entirety of Bloodborne. I'm talking about the Beast Claws, to be specific. The Chalice Dungeons, they feel weird, and there's so many of them, they get really boring. I mean, the new bosses are super fun to fight once you get to them, but a lot of the Chalice Dungeons is just a slog, just slogging through corridors that all look the same, with various enemies that are somewhat interesting, but it's dark and dull and quiet. So I hated the Chalice Dungeons. There are so many of them. They went on for a long time. They included a lot of super bosses, and a lot of the Chalice Dungeons get extremely hard. But they're necessary to play if you're like me and you want 100% completion, because there are achievements that are related to the Chalice Dungeons. Very rare ones, and of course you gotta see like all the bosses you can, right? Fight against all the bosses in Bloodborne, so you gotta do the Chalice Dungeons. Finally, we can talk about Dark Souls, and gee, I spent a little longer on Bloodborne than I would have liked, so I guess I'll try to be fast about Dark Souls Remastered, but we'll see. Dark Souls Remastered, it's a very good remaster, amazing graphics, 60 FPS, looked fantastic. Ironically, it looks even better than Dark Souls 3, not kidding. Dark Souls Remastered, way better graphics than Dark Souls 3. I don't know how that works, but it's true. Uh, yeah, I liked this game a lot more than Bloodborne. To me, it's 10 out of 10, and it's one of my favorite games that I've ever played. It just gets me in that emotional sweet spot where I feel relaxed, I feel at home, and yet I feel like I'm being tested, like I'm growing, like I'm really getting somewhere and I'm really doing something by surpassing these challenges. Dark Souls is a brilliantly designed game, very intelligently made. It's somewhat open world in a sense, however, because the whole entire world is geometrically consistent, and if you no clip, you can reach any area of the map. If you no clip and fly, you can go anywhere at any time, and it's all there. It's just not rendered visually, but every area is there in the game and spatially consistent too. So in a sense, it's overworld. It's just very cramped. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's an open world that's not open. It's like, you know, a cramped, very vertical world full of passageways and tunnels, sort of Metroidvania-y, but it's an action RPG. I really got the vibe that Bloodborne and Dark Souls are pretty similar to Zelda. That's just my opinion. Of course, Zelda doesn't have so many like customizable sets of armor and weapons that and level up feature. That's what makes Dark Souls an RPG, an action RPG. However, in like controls and level design, it's quite similar to Zelda. Dark Souls is a fantasy world with a very interesting plot, in my opinion. I always loved studying Dark Souls lore. I really liked it because it has a more direct story than Bloodborne, but it's very sparse with what it gives the player. That's one of my favorite parts of Bloodborne. I feel like some people wouldn't like how mysterious it is. Like Dark Souls explains so little of itself. It's so stingy with the explanations. It leaves like every gameplay mechanic and piece of story mysterious, but the more you play, the more it makes sense, and it really grows on you like that. That was such an incredible experience to me that brought me so much joy. To go from the beginning where I had so many questions and so much confusion to going to the end where it all makes sense, and then I replay the game and suddenly I know what's happening. That experience of growth is something that, in my experience, only From Software games have ever provided me. That genuine experience of personal growth. Sorry, I'm hearing noises in my house. I'll try to ignore that. Dark Souls, like, where was it going? Personal growth. Jeez. It's just... That's the whole point of the game, really. I consider it to be a deeply personal game that is different for every person who plays it, especially if you're playing it blind. You have to play this game blind. Don't look anything up. Don't go to Reddit and ask people for help. Preferably play it all alone if you can. Don't use the multiplayer so much. I mean, the PvP is okay, but like, definitely participate in PvP. Don't be one of those freaking throwers who just disconnects whenever they're invaded. Participate in PvP. But if you can help it, avoid using co-op. Because to me, the game is just so much better if you find everything out on your own. It really grows on you, and that's the value of Dark Souls. Getting to understand its world, its gameplay, getting better at it, growing, leveling up, making sense of the story. So, love that game so much. I played it for about 200 hours, I think. Can't quite remember the exact number. I think it was like 210 hours. I replayed it. I got all the achievements, trophies. I've been platinum trophying. I platinum trophied Bloodborne, then I platinum trophied Dark Souls. And if I can help it, I avoid looking anything up on the internet. I only do that when, like, I've tried everything and I've already beaten the game. I only do that in New Games Plus when I'm, like, done and I'm ready to, see the game through to the end with the achievements. So I only look things up as a last resort and only after I've completed the story. Dark Souls is wonderful. They really, I don't know if they, I don't think they just captured lightning in a bottle with that game. I really think that From Software is just super freaking smart with how they make games. And of course, all these games are famous for having a ton of cut content. Like, each of them was supposed to be even more and even bigger, but the ambitions were too big in each case. So Bloodborne has cut content, Dark Souls 1 has plenty of it, so do the other Dark Souls games, even Sekiro. Lots of cut content. That's just how From Software works. And what else is there to say in Dark Souls 1? The multiplayer sucks because there's tons of exploits and people aren't very honorable. There's a particular exploit called the lag stab. It's very laggy overall, but the lag stab just is unfair, and it's an exploit that'll kill you instantly. I never understood like why people were so strong in this game, even though they were wearing no armor. Some parts of Dark Souls 1's multiplayer doesn't make sense, and the Covenant feature is not implemented well because it's never explained in-game how the Covenants are different, so it's very confusing to figure out which one to equip. But Dark Souls 1 has plenty of incredible bosses, an amazing soundtrack, and its world is just so... This may be a controversial thing to say, but Dark Souls 1 filled me with... It filled my soul with calm and relaxation. I mean, I felt at peace. Yes, it was hard at points, but it's supposed to be... It's just... Walking around the world of Dark Souls in silence, discovering things and adventuring, filled me with contentness. And I really felt at home in Lordran. It was one of the best gaming experiences of my life, and I love Dark Souls. So some other points of criticism and praise. It has a very weak final boss. Its final boss is unfortunately too easy due to one big weakness that everybody seems to know. As I've said, its multiplayer kind of sucks. The Covenants aren't explained well. That's one thing that the game could have afforded to explain better, even though I think it handles its story very well. The DLC suffered from the same problem as Bloodborne, where it's the best part of the game, but it just, like, ends anticlimactically and doesn't really give you anything concrete as a reward for beating it. Kind of weird. Anything else to say about Dark Souls 1? I don't know. I just love it so much, and I like its story and every bit of its gameplay. And I played it for a long time, and I platinum trophied it. It was very hard to do. Very difficult game for different reasons than Bloodborne. I found Bloodborne more difficult to beat, but Dark Souls 1 was more difficult to platinum trophy, because you gotta find like every spell and every weapon. Very difficult. So let's see. Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, is the forgotten middle child of the Dark Souls trilogy. This was the only Soulsborne game made without the involvement of Hidetaka Miyazaki, the creative director. So it's a bit of a like cash grab sequel that was made without the series creator. And so it feels very different, but it still has its strengths. I will defend Dark Souls 2 as a game that's definitely not that bad. And I think a lot of people who play it nowadays would agree, even though it has a sort of controversial place in the community, because it's not as good as Dark Souls 1, and it was quickly overshadowed by Bloodborne, that I believe came out a year later after Scholar of the First Sin. So that's not even the beginning of why Dark Souls 2 is controversial, though. When Dark Souls 2 was released, it was kind of bad. It was kind of bad. When Dark Souls 2 first released, it had no DLC and a lot of the levels and parts of the gameplay were kind of rough. It had a weak soundtrack and terrible bosses. It went with quantity over quality for bosses. So in Dark Souls 2, it'll just like let any stronger than average enemy, sometimes even just regular enemies that aren't even strong, become bosses. Like Royal Rat Vanguard, which is just a bunch of rats, or Skeleton Lords, which is just a bunch of skeletons, or Prowling Magus, which is just a guy who doesn't even do anything special, or the Worshippers of the Dead, who are just 3 regular NPCs who aren't special in any way. Dark Souls 2 feels like a quantity over quality sort of game. It's just, let's make the longest and most complex Dark Souls game yet, just for the sake of it, and yet it won't be that creative or, like, imaginative. So it's kind of lacking in a lot of creative elements. But, so that's kind of why Dark Souls 2 is looked on less favorably, because when it was new, it sucked. But they improved it. They gave it 3 DLC expansions, which are amazing. They call them the Lost Crowns, and in order they are Crown of the Sunken King, Crown of the Old Iron King, and Crown of the Ivory King. Three incredibly good DLC expansions, which each rival the best parts of Dark Souls 1. I had so much fun playing Dark Souls 2's DLC levels. And it has a lot more DLC than other Soulsborne games. In total, 9 DLC bosses. Some of which are very good, like Sin the Slumbering Dragon, and Burnt Ivory King, and Ilana the Squalid Queen. I very much enjoyed all parts of Dark Souls 2's DLC. They were the best parts of the game, and they were so good that they generally made up for a lot of the mediocrity seen in the rest of Dark Souls 2. But Dark Souls 2, I still like it, okay? They really fixed it up with the updates they gave it. They like added new characters, they added a new ending, they even added a new boss, and they released the Scholar of the First Sin remaster version with better graphics and all these gameplay changes. They really, really fixed it up with the Scholar of the First Sin edition. So Scholar of the First Sin is a great game. Of course, it could be better. But it's better than it was upon the original Dark Souls 2's release. So, anyway, Dark Souls 2, it has a lot of differences from Dark Souls 1. It controls totally different. The physics feel different, very much so. Feels like a different game entirely. It doesn't feel like they used the same engine, but they did. Most things have been remodeled. Lots of interesting new characters. Different tone for this game. Dark Souls 2 to me felt like a Halloween game. Like a lot of skeletons and ogres and, you know, toxic pits of acid and like witches and sorceresses. And wolves and dead trees. Spooky specters. Feels like a kind of Halloween game, but Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne definitely provided me with a nostalgic feeling that touched me deep in my heart. But so did Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 had like a campfire-y vibe to me. I'll just always remember how relaxed and at peace I felt in Majula, with like the calm music and the waves crashing against the cliffside. Majula is the best hub area in the series. It's like a big, not quite a village, but like, what's the word for something that's smaller than a village? I don't know, a villa? Not sure on that. A parish? I don't know. But it has a few buildings, and it has several like friendly NPCs to talk to, and shopkeepers, and people to discuss with to learn more about lore. Has the Emerald Herald, of course, and the bonfire. Dark Souls 2 is a fun game. It has, like, controls issues. People always complain about the rolling in this game. The rolling doesn't work so well as in other Souls games. That's a shame. It has a different graphical style than Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 2 always reminded me very strongly of Twilight Princess. If you've ever played Twilight Princess on GameCube, Twilight Princess has very good atmosphere, you know? It's kind of like dark, yet homey. That's how I would describe Twilight Princess, I guess. It's kind of... It can be morose at times, but it can also feel like a fairy fantasy wonderland, and it can feel very magnificent. Dark Souls 2 is like that, very much. I enjoyed Dark Souls 2's story a lot. It has a good story. It feels like a side story compared to Dark Souls 1. It doesn't touch so much on the lords that were mentioned in Dark Souls 1, but it does touch a lot more on the dark, which I enjoyed very much. Dark Souls 2's story is about the dark and the undead curse. I really enjoyed learning more about those things, the dark and the curse. I thought it was fascinating, a lot of the reveals that were made in that game, and a lot of the lines, like a lot of the writing was really great. So I really loved Dark Souls 2's story. It's different from Dark Souls 1. It goes in a different direction. It no longer focuses on the lords, and it starts going all about the dark and like the children of darkness, who are essentially the antagonists in a sense. And of course King Vendrick, who's reminiscent of Lord Gwyn, and you kind of... The game's generally in the first half about finding Lord Vendrick and solving the mystery of what happened to him. I don't mean Lord, I mean King Vendrick. But yeah, I like really valued this game's lessons that it had to say about the nature of its reality. I loved it. I thought it was a really interesting setting. Just learning more about the curse and like the mechanics of how hollows deteriorate, and are desperately seeking a cure, and how this is all related to the dark and the abyss, which is collapsing the kingdom of Drangleic. Dark Souls 2 has the most bosses of any of these games that I'm discussing today. It has over 40, which is a ton. Most of these have 25. This one has over 40. A lot of them suck. Terrible bosses. Only a handful of really good ones. So, that's Dark Souls 2. What else is there to say? I can think of a few other things to say. I like how Dark Souls 2 is the only one that has changes in the New Game Plus. The Scholar of the First Sin edition. Things change in the world when you start New Game Plus. It's like different enemies in different places, and different subtle differences, but you notice them when you're familiar enough with the game. Yeah, and another thing about Dark Souls 2 is... Where was it? Where was my train of thought? What was I talking about? Come on, I don't want to lose this. New Game Plus, its atmosphere, its story, the curse. Jeez, I don't want to... Yes! I remember what I was going to say. Okay. One of the most important things to know about Dark Souls 2 is that by far it has the best multiplayer of any Soulsborne game. This is not a joke. It has a leaderboard, which I'm on PS4. Last I checked, I was in the top 100. I was like 99, but on the Champions leaderboard. But by now, I've probably been shunted back to like 120. I don't know, 100 and something. So I'm in the top 200, I assume, on PS4. And it just has the best multiplayer because First of all, I think the co-op is pretty balanced. Like, it's not too OP like it is in Dark Souls 3, because Dark Souls 2 has a soul level matchmaking feature. And yet it's not too sparse like it is in Dark Souls 1, where it's like unheard of in Dark Souls 1 that someone's going to help you fight a boss. The remastered version. It's not common, it's rare. Dark Souls 1 has a pretty good balance of that, but the PvP is really where it's at. The PvP in Dark Souls 1 is the best, alright? You got a really good balance of, like, equipment, some interesting weapons and spells to use, and that allows for really dynamic PvP where multiple builds are viable. But the best part is the community is so honorable. You don't see this unspoken system of honor in Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne or Demon Souls. It's only Dark Souls 2 where people follow an unspoken set of rules, okay? You learn quickly by participating in PvP, just learning from other players, alright? You respect each other, you allow each other to cast spells before beginning combat. You don't use healing items, and as soon as someone uses a healing item, then all bets are off, all rules are off the table. You also don't flee. Don't flee during combat. No healing items, allow each other to use spells before the fight. And that's it. If one of you breaks the rules, then start cheating right away. Just, like, you know, run away, disconnect, whatever. But Dark Souls 2 players are so honorable. I'll always remember. I spent many days doing PvP for fun. It was delightful. I loved grinding for, like, PvP covenants in that game. And it actually explains what the covenants do in the covenants description, which is big step up from Dark Souls 1. Best multiplayer by far, not a joke. Loved participating in the PvP so much. I won a lot. I was good at the PvP in this game, which I can't say about Dark Souls 1 and 3. I sucked in PvP in those games. But in Dark Souls 2, I used my Murakumo, I had Vendrick's Helm and the Smelter Demon Armor, and I liked using Dark Weapon, the spell, on my Magic Murakumo, I remember. And the other great thing about Dark Souls 2's PvP is the freaking one... Like, people actually 1v1 in that game. Everybody usually meets up at the bridge to the Iron Keep, and that's where they do PvP, and it's so much fun because it's a good space for PvP. But it provides its own purposeful in-game arenas as well. There are 2 1v1 PvP arenas. Most people use the Brotherhood of Blood one in the Copse. The Huntsman's Copse, I believe it's called, right? Isn't that what it's called? The Brotherhood of Blood Arena, it's free to enter, and I remember at all times of day, it was active. People were in these freaking arenas, 1v1ing me. It's so much fun. I would spend hours in the Brotherhood of Blood area participating in PvP, like, well past midnight, and people were still active. Dark Souls 1 has dedicated arenas, but nobody uses them. It's comedic how rare it is to get a connection in Dark Souls 1. It just doesn't happen. You have people on the Dark Souls 1 leaderboard who were in the top 10 after getting, like, 5 victories. I mean, what? Anyway. So I think that sums up Dark Souls 2. Yeah, it has the best multiplayer, and I love it for that. It has a great story that's, in my opinion, about as good as Dark Souls 1's. Its bosses suck, some of the worst bosses in the series, and the levels are very iffy. Lots of death traps, lots of slowness and boredom and general unoriginality, and just artificial difficulty. Kind of iffy controls, too, and a poor soundtrack, in my opinion, but... the DLC areas freaking make up for all of it. The DLC areas are so good. So good. Frozen Aleum Lois, Broom Tower, and what's the sunken city called? If I thought about it for a little bit, I could probably remember what the sunken city is called, but It's not coming to me right at this moment. I can't remember. I have to move on. The next game I played was Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I decided to take a break off of the Souls and play Sekiro. One more thing about Dark Souls 2. My rating for it is 7.5 out of 10. And Sekiro. I'll start right out by saying I love it. I don't think I'll have as much to say about it. I didn't play as much of it as Dark Souls 1 or 2, because it's generally shorter. It only has like 14 bosses, if I remember correctly, and several of those bosses are recycled, like buffed versions of older bosses. Sekiro is as of now From Software's newest game, although Elden Ring is coming out soon. And unlike all their other games, it's set in Japan and based on Japanese mythology, so Buddhism is very relevant to it. And the whole game is in Japanese and has a Japanese style soundtrack. And of course you play as like a shinobi ninja guy who sneaks around. It's part stealth game. It ditches the RPG mechanics for stealth mechanics, which are very fun. Let me hydrate myself real quick. I've been talking for 46 minutes. Sekiro. Let me start out by saying that I like it a lot. I rate it 9 out of 10. That's my rating for it, so I don't forget later. And in my opinion, the gameplay is just masterful, but the story is so weak, and I'll probably get to that, but let's discuss the gameplay first. So, you play as Wolf, the Wolf, later nicknamed Sekiro, and I pronounce it that way because I've done a little bit of studying Japanese, and like, I most people say Sekiro, but in the game, in Sekiro, most of the characters kind of go Sekiro, so I just feel like I should enunciate every syllable, so I say Sekiro. That's what I prefer. The game is, like I said, ditches the RPG mechanics for stealth mechanics. It's way more technical than any other Soulsborne game. I said Bloodborne was more technical than Dark Souls, and that's true, but Sekiro is completely technically involved. I mean, just to play Sekiro, you need to have the skills of, like, Grandmaster Genji main in Overwatch. You need to have very fast reactions and know your moveset in and out. You have a lot of different techniques in Sekiro, different sword techniques and special abilities. Then you have the shinobi prosthetic arm on your left hand. You know, the left hand is always for special moves in these Soulsborne games, and in Dark Souls you use it for like shields and spells and bows, and Bloodborne you use it for your gun, and in Sekiro it's your prosthetic arm, which you use for mainly projectiles and other special weapon types, aside from your sword. It's also your grappling hook. You have a grappling hook attached to your arm. And it's a movement-heavy game where footing is very important, and timing and rhythm is very important when you deflect attacks and then strike back. It's heavy on the sword fights. There are a lot of sword fights in this game. Sekiro's gameplay is generally, it's extremely linear, like a totally linear game where you're very rarely given the choice of where to go. Although, like Bloodborne, it has plenty of secrets and, like, paths, off the beaten paths where you can find cool stuff off to the side. But anyway, Sekiro's gameplay is generally separated into two halves. The halves are stealth and bosses. It's, well, we'll say stealth and bosses slash mini-bosses, because a lot of the mini-bosses feel like bosses but just aren't due to semantics. So Sekiro is a bit short compared to like Dark Souls 2. I think it's shorter than Dark Souls 2. And probably shorter than Bloodborne as well. And the stealth mechanics are a lot of fun. A lot of fun sneaking around. You got different tools at your disposal and different techniques, and you can one-shot enemies if you surprise attack them. However, as soon as you start fighting enemies in a group, you're in trouble. It's basically impossible to take down groups of enemies because they all have swords and you just have one sword. So you got to be really careful to solo enemies one at a time. But you spend a lot of time doing stealth in this game. I'm a big fan of stealth games. I haven't played a ton of them, but I'm a big fan. Like I've really enjoyed Metal Gear Solid 2 and like Uncharted 4 had a lot of stealth. So I really enjoyed the stealth segments a lot, and they take up a lot of time, and there's a lot of mini-bosses. And I did Platinum Trophy this game, by the way. The only problem with the stealth sections, in my opinion, is that they're easier than the rest of the game. I think the stealth could have afforded to be amped up a little bit, like with more threats, you know, with more chances for me to mess up. Generally, I could kind of just go where I want. I guess in some cases that was not true. There were definitely some very precarious locations, like the first time you get to the roof of Ashina Castle, you know what I'm talking about, with all the Tengus that go, oh! Those guys. I just made a silly noise. And, of course, when you first enter Hirata Estate and you gotta take down that big fat guy, different parts like that where I struggle a lot with the stealth. But the bosses are hyper difficult. I mean, at least as hard as Bloodborne's bosses, in some cases even harder. Sekiro has super bosses for real, in my opinion. Like Lady Butterfly, Demon, I guess you could count the inner bosses and Hirata Owl, also known as Owl Father. So I spent a lot of time doing the bosses in this game, and they gave me such an unparalleled thrill. I very rarely felt more of a rush of excitement and adrenaline than I did while fighting Sekiro bosses like Genichiro, Lady Butterfly, Demon, Sword Saint. So that was tremendously fun and exciting and like one of the most positive experiences of my life on that short scale. And I'll always remember how great of a time I had fighting these bosses. But as for the game's weaknesses, I mean, just such good gameplay. How can I express how good the gameplay is? Some of the best gameplay of all time ever seen in a 3D video game. Combat, it could be the game with the best combat of all time, like at least for a single player game. Seriously, it's that good. As for the game's weaknesses, I'm not a fan of its soundtrack. Only has a couple songs that I'll listen to. It's like a Japanese style soundtrack, I guess, but it sounded just like a lot of droning noise to me, not very melodic, in my opinion. Didn't have a ton of vocals either, from what I remember. And, its story is the main big weakness. Sekiro's story, it just doesn't matter. It's so boring. It's like the worst parts of a Zelda game, where, you know how I've played a ton of Zelda, by the way. I've technically played every main Zelda game, although I haven't beaten them. I've beaten, there's just a couple of them I haven't beaten yet, like Breath of the Wild, but that's neither here nor there. So Sekiro's story is like the worst parts of a Zelda game, where, you know how in like any Zelda game you'll be playing and you get halfway through the game and you'll meet like a sage, a magical maiden lady, and she's like, Link, you must collect the 7 magical, colorful orbs of the elements, or slash like the 7 magical instruments of nature, or the mirror shards, or the pieces of this helmet, or collect all the masks. You must collect the shiny rocks, or collect all the various songs that you need to play, or blah blah blah. Literally every Zelda game has a part where you do that. I mean, maybe not like Triforce Heroes, or can I think of another example? I don't know, like Link's Awakening, you have the instruments. Links to the Past, you have the maidens. Zelda 1 and 2, you have the... In Zelda 1, you have the pieces of the Triforce, and then in Zelda 2, you have the magical orbs that you gotta give to the Moai statues. Ocarina of Time, you have the spiritual stones, then you have the Ocarina of Time itself, and then you have like the Master Sword, and then you have the Sage Medallions, and then Majora's Mask, you got the masks and each of the 4 giants. And, you know, Twilight Princess, you got the mirror shards and the fused shadow. I'm a big Zelda fan. And then Skyward Sword, you have various things. Let's not get into Skyward Sword. There are like so many fetch quests in that game. But the worst part of a Zelda game's story is that sometimes it boils down to a very simple fetch quest. Go fetch the 7, 8, 16 magical artifacts, Link. And Wind Waker. Oof. Wind Waker, that Triforce quest was super difficult for me as a kid. And that's all Sekiro is. Literally, all Sekiro is like you save your master, Lord Kuro, and then he's like, Wolf, you must help me find a series of magical artifacts. So now you're literally just on a scavenger hunt. It's just a scavenger hunt. You gotta find, like, a sacred leaf from a tree and a branch, and you gotta find the magic sword, and, you know, a droplet of a dragon's tear. Am I missing something? I don't know. You just gotta find like a series of magical artifacts, and that's all the story is. There's no character development among any characters. Unless you're going for the bad ending, some weird and interesting stuff happens, but if you're going for one of the good endings, literally there is no character development. Alright, by the end of the story, Wolf doesn't change, Lord Kuro doesn't change, Emma doesn't change, Ishin changes, but his change doesn't make any sense, because it comes out of nowhere and it's never explained how he's doing what he's doing. Genichiro's arc ends prematurely, like, he never gets his satisfying conclusion and he never gets to grow stronger. I mean, the story sucks. The characters are like blank slates, completely devoid of personality, all of them making constant poker faces, except Owl. Owl has personality for sure. Of course, he doesn't last too long, though, and doesn't have a ton of screen time. But all of the characters are just, like, stoic and kind of sad, but other than that, emotionless, never expressing anything. Extremely uninteresting story that was so boring to me. It was just like, you'd talk to Lord Kuro, and Lord Kuro would say, hey, Wolf, go find, you know, the magic stone of whatever. Go to the pit of Ashina to go find the whatever. It's a pretty tropey game. It follows a lot of the tropes of these From Software games. All From Software games, they definitely copy each other, and none of them are very unique from each other. There's very clearly a checklist of concepts that they tick off, like, oh, okay, every Soulsborne game needs a hub maiden, right? The woman who helps you level up and just hangs out at the hub area. And of course it needs a hub area, and it needs checkpoints, usually in the form of like bonfires or lanterns. And every Soulsborne game needs a poison swamp level, and it needs a catacombs level, and a huge castle, and a super hard to fight dragon, and there's always like an old man character that you fight at the end who's like very important in the story. You know, And in your left hand is always something significant, and there's always like a theme of cyclicity that I discussed in my older video, and the main character is always immortal, but they don't like being immortal, so they're trying to fix it. So that's Sekiro. I think I spent about 116 hours playing it or something like that, and I platinum trophied it. Yeah, I did everything that there is to do in it. I spent a while grinding to get all the special shinobi abilities. I like to listen to some podcasts and like interesting long form YouTube videos, and sometimes Twitch streams like Kit Boga while grinding in From Software games. That's a very fun pastime for me. And let's see. Anything else to say about Sekiro? I think not. I think that covers it all. Some of the most enjoyable gameplay I've ever experienced, just a sucky story. 9 out of 10 game in my opinion. Hey, at least it doesn't have Chalice dungeons, right? Beautiful world, beautiful graphics, fun to explore, fun combat. Love the combat so much. Love the controls, love how motion heavy it is. Yeah, I love that game. Next, Dark Souls 3. Oh boy, do I have the energy to talk about Dark Souls 3 right now? I don't know, I've already been talking for an hour, and now I gotta talk about Dark Souls 3. Well, let's try to make it fast. Let's try to make it fast. I am not a big fan of Dark Souls 3. I spent about 160 hours playing it, if I recall. What I always say about Dark Souls 2 and 3 is that they're about equal. Okay, what I always say about Dark Souls 2 and 3 is that Dark Souls 2 is not that bad, and Dark Souls 3 is not that good. And together, they're about equal. You know, I will defend Dark Souls 2 as being not that bad. I will say it's underrated. And I will attack Dark Souls 3 as saying it's not that good. It's overrated. And together they're about as good. But it certainly has flaws and just does not live up to its predecessor, Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 2 felt like a new direction, like a weird new side story about the dark and the undead curse. Dark Souls 3 feels like nostalgia bait. It's like going right back to Dark Souls 1 with a lot of the same plot elements about the lords, you know, but it ditches all of the themes that 2 explored with like the dark and the curse. The curse seems much less significant, and it doesn't even seem to be a source of distress anymore, which is weird to me. It's definitely taking a lot of cues from Bloodborne. Dark Souls 3 feels like heavily Bloodborne inspired, with a lot of the same kinds of Lovecraftian enemies and this dilapidated, crumbling, falling, nonsensical Victorian society. I feel like Dark Souls 1 is a game that makes sense. You know, it's a game that makes sense. You could have your, like, grandma watch you play it, and she would know everything that's happening, and it would make sense, right? Your grandma, who's never played a video game in your life, if she were watching you play Dark Souls 1, she'd be like, oh, this is a cool sort of, like, Lord of the Rings style dark fantasy world, and she would dig it, you know? But Dark Souls 3 takes so many creative liberties, becomes a much less logical game. It's so Bloodborne-y. Bloodborne, like, does a lot of illogical things, but its excuse is that it kind of takes place within a nightmare. You know, it's implied that a lot of what you see in Bloodborne is not real, or it's like a bending of reality or an alternate dimension. But Dark Souls 3 has no explanation for a lot of like the impossible architecture and the crazy Lovecraftian H.R. Geiger stuff going down. It never explains who or what the pilgrims are, or how they turn into butterflies, and why they want to die. It never explains who a lot of characters are, like Osiris or his daughter, what's her name? I can't even remember his daughter's name. I can't remember. His child, you know, the one that he's looking for. So much that it doesn't explain. It's awful. It has an awful story. I feel like Dark Souls 3's entire story was replaced by simple concept art. Like, you ever look at a subreddit like Be Amazed and find like a really cool piece of art that someone drew? That's all Dark Souls 3 is. It's just Reddit art. Like, every character and location in Dark Souls 3 is just a piece of concept art that's not related to any of the things around it and is not explained. Nothing in Dark Souls 3 fits cleanly into the universe. Like, think St. Aldrich's, the Cathedral of the Deep, the freaking profaned capital, which is, it's called the profaned capital. You expect a city, but what you get is nothing more than a single tower, a treasure room, a throne room, and a bridge, and all of that is literally attached to a dungeon, like a jail, and the jail is larger than the profaned capital. What? How is this a capital? Why is Yorm the Giant the Lord of all giants? And he's not even like he has a face now that he's different from all the other giants because he has a human face instead of the giant hole for the face. He's not even big for a giant. There are bigger giants than him. He's an awful boss battle too that you can literally kill in 0 hits. Dark Souls 3 offends me. Dark Souls 3 betrays the values of Dark Souls 1. It's easy. Like, I appreciate that its world is pretty difficult to explore at times. I found some fun exploring the world, kind of, because it got really difficult with how spiderwebby it can be. I liked that, but Dark Souls 3 is linear. There's only one point in the entire game where you're given a choice of where to go, and it's when you have to choose whether to go to the Cathedral of the Deep or Faron Woods. After that, you know, other than that, game's 100% linear. There's a determined order from beginning to end. It's insane. And everything feels disjointed and awful, and it's offensively easy. Just like I was saying, betraying the values of Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne, which are hard, which are meant to grant the player with a sense of satisfaction in their progress and achievement and mastery. Dark Souls 3 is so easy that any child can beat it. Almost none of the bosses in the main game is hard. A few of the DLC bosses are very hard, but literally the only base game boss who gave me any sort of a challenge was the Nameless King. I even first tried the final boss. It's just pitiful. Pitiful. I was so disappointed. And then you have like an Orlando, which is just shoehorned in to like a different city awkwardly. It looks totally out of place. It looks like a freaking Gmod map. Like somebody on Gmod just put an Orlando, the whole Gwyn's Cathedral, in a totally unrelated different map. It's awful. Freaking Irithyll sucks. And the Irithyll dungeon sucks. And Archdragon Peak sucks. The Ancient Wyvern is one of the worst bosses I've ever played in one of these games. You kill it in 1 hit. Why would you want to face a boss that you kill in 1 hit? It literally would have been easier for From Software to just program a regular boss against a dragon than one that you kill in 1 hit. I mean, you already spent the effort of modeling the dragon and giving it different animations and attacks. Just make it a regular freaking fight instead of one that you kill in... Why is this a boss? And Dark Souls 3 is so long. It's one of the longest Soulsborne games, and yet it has fewer bosses than Dark Souls 1. If you don't count DLC, Dark Souls 1 has more bosses than Dark Souls 2. So what you end up getting is like a lot of gameplay, and then relatively few bosses. So you get long stretches and spans of just gameplay of wandering around the world, and it takes forever to get to the next boss. It takes a long time. Is a low ratio of bosses to exploration time spent. And when you finally do get to a boss, you're going to first try it anyway because it's so easy. I hate Dark Souls 3. I mean, you see what I mean, right? Jeez. It's overrated, severely overrated. I think Dark Souls 3 is so popular because, well, it's easy, so it's accessible for people, and there was so much hype over it since it was supposed to be, you know, the successor to the critically acclaimed Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 was like a sleeper hit. Nobody knew about it. It took off on YouTube, then it got super big. Now everyone knows in hindsight that it's an amazing game, and everyone's playing it after the fact. But Dark Souls 3 had hype, you know, because it had Dark Souls 1 behind it. So I mean, Dark Souls 3 has hype, so everyone played and bought it, you know? And they weren't disappointed because it wasn't as messed up as Dark Souls 2 was on release. But it's lacking story, it's lacking quality bosses. It can feel so slow and boring. Its world design sucks. Level design and environment, its level design's actually pretty good, but its environment design sucks because none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. Catacombs of Carthus. How are there? By the way, another catacomb level. Wow, big trope. Love it. Great guys, thanks. But how is a desert catacomb lying between a swamp and an icy chasm? How is the catacomb of a desert empire between the swamp and the icy chasm? Everything feels so disjointed and wrong. Why do they even make Catacombs of Carthus? I would legitimately like Dark Souls 3 a little bit more if just Catacombs of Carthus was not in it. If after beating the Abyss Watchers you just teleported to Irithyll, I would like Dark Souls 3 like 5% more. Because just illogical design stuff like that makes me hate it. But as for the DLC, Ashes of Ariandel, I think even fans of Dark Souls 3 would agree with me that Ashes of Ariandel can feel slow and boring. It's a huge like world that you get in Ariandel, but not a lot in it. Only 2 bosses, and one of those bosses sucks hardcore. The freaking Gravetender. Champion's Gravetender, horrible boss. Frida is actually a pretty great boss though, and now I'm about to give you a hot take, about to drop a possibly controversial opinion, but the Ringed City DLC, disappointing to me. I mean, the Dreg Heap was like interesting. Again, this game gets. Dark Souls 1 made a lot of sense to me. It was like a logical story and a logical game, but then compare like Dark Souls 1, what's the craziest thing you see in that? Like the Chasm of the Abyss, I don't know, the Bed of Chaos, Lost Izalith, the arch trees, you know, at the bottom of the world. And compare all that to the Dreg Heap in the Ringed City DLC. The freaking Dreg Heap. Like, what is this? Dr. Seuss? Just, there's no more. This feels like it's in a different universe, you know? This feels like not my Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1 and 2, they tried hard to make sense and be like a grounded, concrete fantasy world with internal consistency. Dark Souls 3 ditches the undead curse, ditches the logic, and retcons things, like apparently now Gwendolyn and Ornstein and Smough all survived the events of Dark Souls 1. Okay, cool retcon, bro. And then you get to the Dreg Heap, and like the Undead Settlement, which just remind me of Dr. Seuss or Salvador Dali drawings. Just impossible architecture, and really, all feels like concept art. It all feels like they never got beyond the concept art stage. They just drew some concept art and then they said, yeah, program that, model that, explain it, fit it into the world in a way that makes sense. No. You just every level's going to be different. Every level's going to be like a different thing. We're going to have an ice level, a catacombs level, a swamp level, a cathedral level. Just make it look as cool looking as possible, and we'll awkwardly squeeze it in like this is some sort of Roblox obstacle course full of mismatched assets. That's how I feel about Dark Souls 3. And the Dreg Heap is like cool in concept, but it just feels like it's from a different game entirely. It's like not my Dark Souls. But I really like the Demon in Pain and Demon Prince boss. Great boss. And then you get to the Ringed City itself. I feel like there's some cool lore attached to it. But the Ringed City, especially the lower part of it, like around where you see Midir, got boring in my opinion. And then you touch that freaking egg. You touch a rotten egg, and then the world turns to ash. That's not explained. I have no idea what that means. You touch a rotten egg, wake up a sleeping woman, she dies, and the world turns to ash. Excuse me? What's happening? I don't get it. And then you meet Santa Claus, and this new character who's like has no relevance to the rest of the Dark Souls series. He's the final boss? This guy? This freaking Santa Claus looking mother trucker? He's the final boss of the whole trilogy. Really? This is how you're ending the story of Dark Souls. Like some new character who has no relevance to the overall lore, no significance. Alright, let's think of what the true final boss of the Ringed City could have been. It could have been like an embodiment of the dark. It could have been, the abyss itself, the personification of the abyss. It could have been like the source of all souls or humanity. It could have been where all souls or all humanity is made. It could have been the first flame. I don't know. It could have been... jeez. Something that brings it all back to Dark Souls 1. Something that ties it together with a ribbon. And instead it's just a guy, a stranger, a new character, a nobody. Some bearded, homeless hobo. He points at you. He says, "Give me that thing, your dark soul. I need it for my lady's painting." What? 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 Did you... I'm like... Ugh. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do I hear what I'm saying? Did that make any sense to you? Okay, so you're out here searching for the Dark Soul, which you never even find. You're searching for the Dark Soul. Why? So that some girl can use it as ink for her painting? So you're searching for the Dark Soul to use as ink for a painting. Okay, the most the Dark Soul is basically more powerful than the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. The Dark Soul is an extremely important primeval artifact in the Dark Souls universe. So you're searching for it, and then you meet Gale. Yeah, his name's Gale. He's like, "Give me that thing, your Dark Soul. I need it for my lady's painting." What? But you don't have the Dark Soul. You're still looking for it. And then he fights you, and he's corrupted by the Dark Soul. So wait, he's the one who has it? But if he has it, then why doesn't he just bring it to the girl? And what's the girl's name, by the way? Is she ever named? I used to think she was called Elfrida, because in some of the flavor text, there's a character referred to as Elfrida. I'm convinced that Elfrida is just a misspelling of Frida. That must be the case, because I think the painter is just called the Painter, and her identity is never revealed, the Painter. Her identity is ambiguous. Who is she? Where does she come from? I don't know. but she needs the Dark Soul so she can make a painting, so you fight Gale over it. And then you don't end up finding the Dark Soul, you find, like, a piece of Dark Soul goo? I'm at my wit's end trying to make sense of Dark Souls 3. I hope that by giving some examples of my experience with it, I've explained to you well enough why I hate it. It's a 7 out of 10 game in my opinion. That's my rating for it. 7 out of 10. Dark Souls 2 is 7.5 out of 10. I favor Dark Souls 2 by a little bit. It has its own flaws. Dark Souls 3, man. I only got one last thing to say about it before I move on, and that's that its multiplayer is the worst. Even worse than Dark Souls 1. Yeah, in Dark Souls 1 you had covenants that didn't make any sense, and you had like lag stabs and various exploits and glitches. But in Dark Souls 3 you have an extremely dishonorable community. You know why? You know why? Because in Dark Souls 2 you're only facing off against very dedicated fans who are here playing Scholar of the First Sin years after its release and are good enough at the game to get this far into it and get a really good loadout, you know, and kit prepared. In Dark Souls 3, the game is so easy that anybody can beat it and anybody can get all the good equipment. So you're facing off against, like, kids. Like, this is freaking CSGO or, like, COD. Yeah, this is COD. This is the COD of From Software. So my experience playing Dark Souls 3's multiplayer was miserable. I'll get to PvP in a second because that's where it's really important, but co-op in Dark Souls 3, severely broken, OP. There's no matchmaking system in Dark Souls 3, so you can be level, like, 5 and connect to level 200s. Yeah, that can happen. And they'll just carry you across any boss for free. Co-op signs are extremely common, summon signs, because there are so many people playing Dark Souls 3 still to this day. It's the newest Dark Souls game. Very high, huge active player base. And PvP in this game is really popular. But there's no honor to it like there was in Dark Souls 2. You'll never get anybody to just do a fair 1v1 with you. It won't happen. You can't just, like, invade somebody in a neutral ground and fight them 1v1. There are people who will, like, invite their buddies, their co-op buddies with them, to just kill invaders on repeat in Irithyll and Orlando. There are people who establish, like, underground fight clubs and rings in Irithyll, or where else do they do it? I mean, sometimes in Farron Woods, but it's very common in Irithyll. They'll just freaking fight clubs and loot farms, noob killing farms. People will just do PvP the wrong way. No one will ever 1v1. It's always 1 versus 4. You have all these people chasing you. You can try to attack the host, but they always have so many buddies protecting them. And when I played Dark Souls 3, I sucked at the PvP. I preferred to use a greatsword because it was so good against most enemies. I could literally stun lock all enemies. It was laughably easy. Not even laughably, it was just upsettingly easy. It made me so bummed out how easy it was to kill enemies, because I would hit them with my greatsword, they would just fall over repeatedly. I mean, I have video of this happening. Like, I wish I could say that Dark Souls 3 has fun combat, but in my experience, all it was just knocking people over with my freaking greatsword. But anyway, the greatsword doesn't work well in actual player PvP because it's too slow, and people will dodge it really easily. So, that was my preferred weapon, and I tried some different weapons, but I could just never match most of the people I was facing off against, especially because all these people they already had the best weapons and equipment before I did. They were higher level because this game has no matchmaking system, and they always had like 4 buddies with them, so I never got a fair 1v1. I feel like Dark Souls 3 actively encourages toxicity, actively discourages honorable 1v1s, and just actively encourages ganging up on people in bad manners. One thing I would see all the time is when I died in PvP, people would use the point down emote on me. Every time. And I would die most of the time because I was so bad at PvP. Nobody did that in Dark Souls 2. Some people did it in Dark Souls 1, but nobody did that to you in Dark Souls 2. Nobody would use the freaking point down emote at your dead corpse just to BM you. I mean, sometimes I would, like, wave to people, you know? I would use the wave emote, and then I would use the hello rock, and then I would let them kill me. I did that a few times to like see what would happen. They still use the point down emote because this game has a terrible community, because this game has terrible multiplayer features that discourage actual, genuine, sincere combat and just encourage ridiculous grinding and goofing around and exploiting, really. It was miserable. I had to grind PvP for various covenants to get this game's platinum trophy. I had to grind for Aldrich Faithful and Watchdogs of Farron and what are they called? Darkmoon Blades, I believe. And so I had to do a lot of PvP. It was miserable. I spent hours and days losing and getting the point down emotes. I could never just like fight a host all alone. Never. Because they always had so many people. It was never just me versus them. It was always so many people. And I didn't understand. Like, sometimes there would be like purple phantoms who were fighting the host, and then I would attack the host, and then the purple phantoms would turn on me and start fighting me. Like, what? I'm trying to help you kill the host. Nothing in this game's multiplayer makes sense. Everybody is misbehaved. Everybody is trolling. Everybody is out to freaking spite me. It feels awful, and I hate Dark Souls 3. It's a hard 7 out of 10. I give it a high rating of 7 out of 10 still because, I mean, it controls fine. It has, like, fun customizability. It has fun level design. I think its environment design sucks, but its level design is pretty good. There's a difference. Environment design is like presentation and visuals and mood, and making sense of the world around you. Whereas level design is like the actual shape of the area you're traveling, the geometry of it. Like, you know, you got a platform up here and the staircase up here, and you got the mini boss arena right here, and the, you know, enemy placement. That's level design. Dark Souls 3's level design is very strong. It's like, it can feel Metroidvania at times, even though it's a linear game overall. It can feel like a linear series of non-linear, very complex areas with a lot of like winding around. So I enjoyed that. Lots of secrets. I mean, good bosses in the Ringed City and Sister Frida. Some pretty good soundtrack. I don't know. Maybe 7 out of 10 is too high, but objectively speaking, it seems solid. It just seems not for me. It's like, because it's not the game I wanted. It's not what I expected. It's not the successor to Dark Souls 1 that I expected and desired. It's too easy, and its story sucks. And its multiplayer made me depressed. So I hope that that all made sense to you. I've been talking for an hour and a half. I have only one more game to go over. I spent, I think, about 64 hours playing Demon Souls on PS5. I have yet to play the PS3 version, but I do have it, and I have a PS3, and I'm looking forward to one day playing the PS3 version of Demon Souls, but I decided to play the PS5 version first. On my PS5, and I rate Demon Souls 2020 8 out of 10. That's my final rating for it. Very good game. It may surprise you to hear that Demon Souls, in my opinion, was the hardest of all of these games. It gave me the most trouble. That's really my genuine opinion. Demon Souls... Sheesh, where do I begin? Well, I Platinum Trophied it, thank goodness, so I've Platinum Trophied all of these games, and I'm glad. It feels good. Of course, it has the best graphics of any game I've ever played. That goes without saying. It's the PS5's launch title, after all, so it's new, current gen. Well, Demon Souls is like a prototype of what led to Dark Souls, so there are many similarities. It seems kind of like an unfinished sort of variant of Dark Souls. The hollows are a bit different. The light versus dark themes are a bit different. The setting is different. So it's not the same world as Dark Souls, but the concepts are like all there, just slightly not fully formed the same way that we know them in Dark Souls. But there's still like zombies and demons and evil people and a lot of the same themes in the story. It definitely feels like a PS3 game, yeah. It feels like a PS5 remake of a PS3 game. Whereas I just called Dark Souls 3 a linear series of non-linear areas. Demon Souls is more a non-linear series of linear areas, because you get your choice of like 5 levels that you can play in whichever order you prefer. There's also one level which is cut from the game, however still prominently shown, like still prominently displayed, but you just can't enter it because it was never finished, because that's what cut content does for you. The levels themselves, it is a level-based game, and they're all linear, entirely linear, front to back. Of course, Boletarian Palace, Stonefang Tunnels, Tower of Latria, Shrine of Storms, and Valley of Defilement, each with their own like sub-areas. They're each split into at least 3 sub-areas. I don't know what you'd call them. Maybe you could say that the 5 worlds, in Mario Bros. Terms, are split into 3 to 5 levels in Mario terms. And each world has a different theme, each archstone. It's a brutal game. Lots of traps and, like, tough enemies. Very, very hard. You can sense at points, like, their lack of... It's kind of a low-budget game. There's, like, a lack of what they were capable of doing. So they reused a lot of stock assets, like crates and wagons and barrels, and a lot of the same enemies. Very few enemy types in this game. Generally, each level will have, like, one primary enemy type, you know, like Skeleton, Hollow Knight, Mind Flayer, as for Tower of Latria, or Gargoyle. Every level will generally have just like one main enemy and the second side enemy. it seems like a pretty simple game. It has not that many sets of armor and not that many weapons. And this may sound strange, but I felt like that really worked in the game's favor. It worked in Demon Souls' favor that it had so few choices of what you could equip. Because in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, you have dozens or even hundreds of pieces of armor and weaponry. You're never going to use them all. I mean, they're arbitrary. What you choose to wear is essentially arbitrary because you have so many choices and so many good choices. But Demon Souls made the best out of it because you only have a dozen or a couple dozen pieces of armor or weapons. So each equipable item that you get is kind of equally good, most of them, and suited for a different purpose. So I ended up switching armor and weapons very often, almost for every situation, because they would be better suited to different situations. I'd want a different set of armor for this enemy, because, different type of damage, fire damage, magic damage, poison level. I want to put something on that protects me from poison. Of course, you have rings, which carried on into Dark Souls games, and spells. Yeah, the spells, too, are very limited. You have miracles and sorceries, just like in Dark Souls. And also very limited, because there aren't that many varieties of spell and sorcery, so you get to decide which one you prefer. Very, very basic uses for these miracles and sorceries. It was odd that I felt like the game's lack of variety somehow gave it, in practice, more variety than Dark Souls. Because in Dark Souls, I would find one set of armor, like Havel's armor, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to use this forever. I'm going to just level up my endurance or capacity stat all the way, and then just use Havel's armor all the time. Or in Dark Souls 2, the Smelter Demon armor. And in Demon Souls, I was changing my armor all the time. Sometimes I wanted lightweight armor. Sometimes I wanted heavyweight armor. It felt good. It felt like I had to be resourceful with what I got, which just made it more fun. Seems ironic, I know. So let's see. Demon Souls' story is not important. It's not like a groundbreaking story. Kind of just like a... It's interesting. Parts of it are interesting. It feels like half-baked compared to Dark Souls, though, which just explores a lot of the same themes but does it better. And it's not very complex, the story. And in fact, many things in Demon Souls are mentioned but quickly dropped and never mentioned again, like Valor Facts of the Twin Fangs and the Deep Fog. Just certain things very rarely brought up that seem important. Demon Souls has a really mixed bag of bosses. A lot of the bosses suck. Some of them are pretty good, though. Flame Lurker, that's a great boss. I was a fan of Man-Eater, even though that may be controversial because, who likes falling off a cliff, but I just had fun with it. Of course, the guy you fight at the end, he's very fun. But then it has sucky bosses like Dragon God and Maiden Astraea. Some of the worst bosses I've fought in any of these games, just gimmicky, puzzly, unfair bosses that are just lame and not interesting and not like an actual challenge, but they'll just kill you right away. Because those freaking babies in Astraea's pit, I mean, what? You just jump in the pit and you get hugged a bunch to death in the poison pit, so you just want to shoot her from a distance and bring 150 arrows and spam at her. Speaking of arrows, Demon Souls has a very limited equipment capacity. Your weight capacity runs out very fast, so you really got to be selective about what you bring with you. I mean, you can't hold that many arrows, and you can't wear very heavy armor. It's just another thing that made the game feel more resourceful to me. it feels like in its lack of variety, somehow it forces you to choose how you want to play. Because you can't use every good thing you have at your disposal. You can't have every good spell and also have arrows and also have the good set of armor. You can only have one or the other. You gotta pick. So I found that element of Demon Souls fun. Extremely brutal game. I mean, how do I express it? Just so much death going on. There were extremely long walks between bosses and the nearest checkpoints. The runbacks were severe and intense. You could spend like 6 minutes going from a checkpoint to a boss. And by a checkpoint, I mean an archstone. So lots of potential for death, and I had to get resourceful, as I'm saying. I ended up using a lot of the cloak spell that made me invisible from enemies, just so I could get to a boss. I used a lot of magic in general. I use poison arrows sometimes. They're very good. And the game has so many enemies and so many pitfalls and death traps. Just so freaking hard. But I found that so fun. It could feel artificially hard at times, like for example in the Dragon God boss fight, or in some areas of the Valley of Defilement where you got like way too many enemies all around you, plus poison damage and just maze-like level design. Or Tower of Latria, where it's all cramped and you have no choice but to run face to face with a bunch of mind flayers who one-shot me all the time because I didn't have great defense against magic damage. So what I'd like to get across is that I really enjoyed this game, but I found it to be one of the most difficult gaming experiences of my life, which just made me like it more. There were a few moments, like in Tower of Latria, where I started to lose my patience, and the main thing wrong with this game, aside from the mediocre bosses, is the freaking soul tendency feature. Yeah, it's just... It has this thing called soul tendency. There are two types of soul tendency: world tendency and character tendency. And soul tendency is implemented extremely poorly. I mean, it's a horrible feature. I'm told that it's different in the PS3 version, that they actually made some changes to make it better in the PS5 version, which sounds insane to me because it sucks in the PS5 version. So what you have is, let's get into character tendency first. Your character, your avatar, has a soul tendency. It starts out neutral, which is white. It can get better, which makes it gold, or it can get worse, which makes it black. What you do to make it worse is you simply engage in PvP. If you choose to invade someone and initiate PvP, you get black soul tendency. And what does that mean? Well, your maximum HP is decreased, so you have less hit points, and damage is more effective towards you, and you deal less damage when you have black soul tendency. So yes, by doing PvP, you debuff yourself. Great! Then why put PvP in the game at all? There's literally nothing to gain from it. You're hurting yourself. It's insanity. Why is PvP in the game? You can't even unlock PvP, like the Red Invasion Stone, unless you get the game's bad ending. Getting the good ending rewards you with nothing, but getting the bad ending rewards you with PvP, which gets you black soul tendency and makes you weaker. I mean, this game is insane. Like, who chose to make it this way? Getting gold character tendency will make you more powerful. Higher HP, higher attack power. Cool, great. World tendency. Oh, and by the way you get white soul tendency is actually by killing an invader. So I mean, it's rare that that's going to happen because not that many people are invading anyway. I very rarely got invaded in Demon Souls because, like, why would you invade? You're going to hurt yourself. The only reason to do it is for one achievement. There's an achievement for killing someone as an invader, but once you get that, you just want your soul tendency to stay gold, right? So you're more powerful. However, you get strange and specific rewards for getting black and gold soul tendency. If you get gold character tendency, you know, you might find things. You might, like, find secret rings, which you need for one of the trophies, or I don't know, pieces of equipment, spells. You might even get access to different parts of the world, or, like, characters will talk to you when otherwise they wouldn't talk to you. What I find more important than character tendency is world tendency. Each archstone, each world, has a different world tendency, and it can go black or it can go gold. It starts at neutral white. You make it go better, get gold by defeating a boss. That's the main way. Or you make it go black by, get this, dying. Yeah, well, specifically by dying in human form. You have two forms in this game, similar to all the rest of the Souls games, where in Dark Souls you have hollow form and human form. In Demon Souls you have soul form and human form. And similar to being a hollow, being in soul form makes you weaker because your HP is halved. That's the main difference. In soul form your HP is halved. In human form your HP is full. However, if you die in human form, your world tendency goes black, and that is horrific. You don't want that to happen. If your world tendency gets closer to gold, the enemies, they get weaker. Their attack power and their HP both decrease. And if you get gold soul tendency, you unlock secret parts of the map. You're allowed into new areas. Like each world has a hidden spot which is only accessible if you, usually two hidden spots. Each archstone usually has two hidden locations which are only accessible if you have gold soul tendency, and it will unlock, world tendency. It will usually unlock, and they're not terribly hard to find. Usually there's a note pointing you in that direction. And usually you'll find like a very special item and a very special NPC to talk to. And you need to unlock all these areas to get a trophy to complete the game and get that platinum trophy. So it's important to get your world tendency to gold. However, that means you never ever want to use human form. If your world tendency gets to black, the enemies, they're buffed. Harder to kill, easier for them to kill you. And you don't want that. The game becomes unplayable. I had black soul tendency for most of my time in Tower of Latria. I was miserable, getting one-shot by mind flayers all the time. Plus, new enemies will spawn. More enemies spawn. If you have black soul tendency, these super buff red enemies will spawn all over the place, who just are like mini bosses in their own right, but they respawn and they're terrible. So seems like you would want to avoid black soul tendency at all costs. So what you end up doing, what most players end up doing, is never what players who are in the know, what they do is never use human form. Every time you enter human form, what you do, what people actually do, I did this, every good Demon Souls player does this. You go to the Nexus once you've entered human form, because the Nexus is a neutral zone where there is no world tendency and you're free to die. You hop off of a tall staircase in the Nexus, kill yourself, respawn in soul form, and now you can return. So after every boss you beat in Demon Souls, you need to immediately snuff out the thrill of having beat that boss by going back to the Nexus to kill yourself, because you wouldn't want to die in this world with human form, or else you'll ruin your world tendency, and world tendency is so important to playing the game. You need to maintain it at all costs. If you get black soul tendency, the game becomes unplayable, and you need to beg other players to help you. There's no way. Like Tower of Latria, trying to escape Black Soul tendency, I mean, don't even think about it. It's almost... It's miserable. The game becomes impossible with all these buffed enemies. But you need Black World tendency sometimes. Believe it or not, there are times where it's necessary. There are things you can only unlock, special rings and pieces of equipment that you need for achievements, trophies, completion, that you can only find with Black World tendency. There will be like a hidden ring, you know, in some obscure spot on the map that only spawns during Black Soul tendency and is super hard to find, and you would never guess where to find it. Demon Souls does a lot of strange design things, and then there's this whole weird quest that you need to do for completion where you need to get Black Soul tendency and you need to kill a specific NPC, and then a new NPC will spawn called Mephistopheles, and Mephistopheles hires you to systematically murder every other NPC in the game. And you do all this, but only for the sake of one single ring, which isn't even that good, but you need it for a trophy. I had to go through so much trouble to complete Demon Souls. And, well, I've been doing a lot of talking, and I hope after everything I've said, you understand why Demon Souls was some of the greatest challenge that a video game has ever brought me. And, despite all the weird design choices, you know, linearity, lack of enemy types, lack of unique assets, a lot of mediocre boss battles, a story that's not terribly interesting, I had a ton of fun with its gameplay. The feeling of exploration in Demon Souls was tremendous. And the RPG elements were... I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun figuring out Demon Souls. It was very unique. It asked a lot of very interesting things of my abilities that the other Dark Souls games didn't. And it had some, I mean, wonderful graphics, like breathtaking world. The levels were really interesting. Like, they didn't follow a lot of the same tropes as other Dark Souls games. Sure, you had the giant castle and you had the Pit of Defilement, which other Dark Souls games have, like, of course, Lower Blight Town, the Poison Swamp, Farron Woods, Lower Ringed City, the Gutter, Ashina, Sunken Valley, I'm sure Bloodborne has some equivalent. Yeah. So Demon Souls has the Valley of Defilement, which is very similar in concept, and of course Patches, and King of Lance, who's kind of similar to Gwyn or Gehrman or Ishin. So I enjoyed Demon Souls very much, and I hope you can see why I consider it to be 8 out of 10. And finally, that concludes all my thoughts on every game in the Soulsborne Super Series, and I'm very eagerly looking forward to Elden Ring. I've pre-ordered it. I'll play it right away, and I'm also planning on releasing a video eventually about the Soulsborne comics, which I'm reading, which are ambiguously canon. Comics on Dark Souls, Sekiro, and Bloodborne. I will probably be making a video on those comics. I think that's the plan. It's not finished yet, though. It's not even like in early stages of being made. And that is all that I wanted to say. I really wanted to share my opinions on the Soulsborne series, really get it out there. And this ended up 2 hours long, so you can see why I didn't want to do a full review video on this subject, because that would not have been possible. I'm not about to do that, because Oh boy. So to sum it up, my favorites from best to worst are Dark Souls Remastered, 10 out of 10. Bloodborne, 9 out of 10. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, 9 out of 10. Demon Souls 2020, 8 out of 10. Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, 7.5 out of 10. And Dark Souls 3 The Fire Fades Edition, 7 out of 10. All very good. Love the series. It's one of my favorites. I'm super into it. It's one of the only series where I've played all the games. I still can't even quite say that about Zelda, which is another one of my favorite series. And super looking forward to where this series is going. I'm gonna keep at it. Gonna play Elden Ring. I hope Bloodborne 2 comes out. I don't think Sekiro 2 is gonna be a thing, but Bloodborne 2 I definitely think will exist. And I'll play it. And hey, if Bloodborne comes out on PC and can run at 60 FPS, I'll definitely replay it then. Because Bloodborne has some technical issues. Dang, I forgot to mention that while I was overviewing the game. But you know what I'm looking forward to most of all is finally ending this freaking recording. I mean, my throat is getting sore. I've been talking and talking for literally 2 hours. I'm getting sore. I'm getting hoarse. Yeah. So, I highly doubt that anyone is going to listen to this video in its entirety, at least not anytime soon. It's going to be a long time before anyone takes an interest in this, if ever. But I've recorded it. It's done. I've wanted to do this for quite a while. You know, I got a lot of projects on my mind, and this was one of them. Just one continuous take is what it is. I wasn't sure if it would be an edited thing or not, but or a scripted thing, but it's over. I've done a thing today. I've been quite productive, and before I started recording this, I was doing other work on my upcoming video as well. I enjoy making videos. It's extremely hard, but hey, I love a challenge. That's why. That's what Soulsborne has taught me, to really relish the challenge and the experience of proving to myself that I can do something I've never done before. Video making is extremely hard to me, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy trying to develop these skills of mine, and you know, and doing it and making it real and making it happen, making something out of nothing. I'm gonna press on. Season 1 of Illusion, we'll call it. Season 1 of Illusion season... Season 2. Illusion Season 2 is almost done, and I'll be taking a short hiatus of maybe a month or a few weeks, or over a month, and I'll still be playing games, of course. I just got a lot to manage right now in real life. Illusion Season 2, I got some interesting plans for that I'm looking forward to making a reality. It has become past midnight. It is now January the 2nd. Although, I'm recording this on January the 2nd, although I may not actually make the video public for more days or weeks, I don't know. Super happy that I got to record today. I'm feeling good about it, and thank you very much, and goodbye. I'm cutting this short of 2 hours long. Goodbye, everyone. Love you. Love Soulsborne. Hope you enjoy Soulsborne. Soulsborne is great. I love it. Dark Souls. It's fantastic. Miyazaki. It's the best thing. Great. Love it. Goodbye.